And actually, I've just been given a reminder. If you have questions that you would like to ask, please post them as soon as you would like into the chat box to the right-hand side of your screen, as we will start to field and have a look at answers to those questions. So as soon as you've got a question, please put them in the box. And in order to do that, you just need to go to the top right of your screen, and there is a question mark icon. So just click on that and post your questions. Okay, everybody, I am going to make a start today's session. So I am going to begin by welcoming everyone. Thank you for making the time to come to the RV Communities Fund session today. My name is Candice Presland, and I'm the manager of the households team here at Sustainability Victoria. I've worked on various programs at SV for over a decade now, mostly in the waste and resource recovery space. And prior to this, I delivered community outreach programs in the not-for-profit sector, and also I've contributed to community services within a local Victorian local government. I am extremely committed to tackling climate change and working with passionate people like yourselves in order to do so. I'd also like to now introduce the rest of the team that are here with me today. So we have the RV Communities Fund team. So I have Alice Young-Drew, our Program Officer, and you will get to hear from Alice shortly. I've also got Andrea Pape, the Program Lead for the program, Nadia Boyce, our Communications Partner, and today we are also joined by the RV Council's Fund team. So we have Grace Rogerson, our Program Officer, and Linda Duffy, the Program Lead. Just to let you know, we are recording this session today and it will be published on SV's website and sent to attendees after the session today. You can ask questions via the My Questions chat box to the right of your screen. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're confused as to how to ask a question, there is an icon to the top right of your screen with a question mark in it. Just click in that and you can type your question into the chat. As there are almost 200 people, or actually there's almost 300 people signed up for today's session. So for that reason, we may not get to all of your questions. However, we will endeavour to answer them via the information bulletin on the SV website. And just another reminder, we update information on the SV website and via information bulletins on a regular basis. And so I encourage you to look at that information regularly, just to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. So I now want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting today, the Wurundjeri and Boon Wurrung peoples, and to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and the elders of the nations upon which you are all tuning into from today. I acknowledge that we live and work on the lands of the most sustainable culture in the world, and that the unique knowledge systems of Aboriginal people and their contributions to our understanding of climate change and our environment are being slowly, belatedly recognised. At SV, we are working towards Indigenous inclusion in our program design and workplace, and more generally, and welcome your support and/or guidance as we go on this journey. So on the screen, you'll see the agenda for today's session. So we will talk you through what a circular economy is, a little bit about the Recycling Victoria policy. Alice will also update you on the Recycling Victoria Communities Fund and give you all the important details that you need to know, including how to apply and a checklist. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end of the session, roughly about half an hour, for you to ask questions and for us to provide answers to those questions. I'll just reiterate, there are lots of people potentially on in the session today. And so we will do our best to get through the questions. However, we may not be able to do that, and we will provide an update on the SV website. So what is a circular economy? There may be people here today who are all too familiar with waste creation being a linear process. So we create a product, and as consumers, we buy that product, we use it, and when we're finished, we put it in the bin where it ultimately ends up in landfill. Now, I found a definition today from Zero Waste Scotland. A circular economy is part of the solution to our global climate emergency, one in which products, services and systems are designed to maximise value and minimise waste. A circular economy is all-encompassing for life and business, where everything has value and nothing is wasted. In simple terms, it's explained as make, use, remake, as opposed to make, use and dispose of. Now, I'm sure I don't need to tell any of you that this is a really big and complex issue, and there are no quick and easy fixes. At present, Australians have one of the largest material footprints in the world at 35 tonnes per person. That's 10 tonnes or 40% higher than the United States, Japan, the United Kingdom and Chile. We also know Victorians are dedicated recyclers. However, we also know we must enable Victorians to avoid creating waste and to ensure that we can get more value from our precious and finite resources. Our end goal is to reduce the environmental impacts of production and consumption, to enable economic growth through the productive use of resources, to avoid waste through good design, and to recover materials so that they can continue to be used in the future. Now, just to a quick overview of the Recycling Victoria policy. Over the next decade, Recycling Victoria, a $380 million circular economy policy and action plan, will fundamentally overhaul the way we avoid, minimise, reduce, reuse and recycle. Recycling Victoria will transform Victoria's recycling sector, generate jobs, create a new economy, drive investment and innovation to reduce waste. The policy aims to reduce waste generation by 15% per capita and to reduce organic waste to landfill by 50% by 2030. The goals of the Recycling Victoria are to design to last, repair and recycle, use products to create more value, recycle more resources and reduce harm from waste. As such, the Victorian Government will fund councils and community organisations to reduce waste over the next decade, starting with a $14.6 million investment over the next 4 years. Through this funding, you can ensure that your communities choose waste-free products, reuse materials, and maintain and repair the goods that we have. If you'd like to know more about Recycling Victoria, there is a link to the policy shown at the bottom of this slide. The waste hierarchy. Understanding the waste hierarchy is important as it shows us the most impactful ways to transition to a circular economy and away from a linear economy. At the top of the hierarchy, we avoid, because avoiding creating waste in the first place will have a much bigger impact than any other intervention. As we move down the hierarchy, there are other interventions such as the reuse of materials, repair and recycling, and composting that are important. However, the main intent of this funding is to avoid and minimise waste. So before I pass over to Alice, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things from the presentation thus far. The Recycling Victoria Communities Fund is aimed at the top end of the waste hierarchy. This fund is for projects that avoid, minimise, reuse, repair, recycle and compost. If your project has a primary focus of litter cleanup, we recommend that you look for other opportunities for funding and there will be other programs potentially launched by government over the next few months, which may better address your particular project or program. So now I'm going to pass over to Alice, who will run you through the important aspects of how to apply for funding. So over to you. Thanks, Alice.
Thanks, Candice. And hi, everybody. I am Alice Young-Drew. I'm the Program Officer for the RV Communities Fund. A bit of background about me. I've been with SV for about nearly 3 years now. And regarding my involvement in community organisations, back in Wellington, New Zealand, I used to volunteer for a community organisation that repurposed food from supermarkets, restaurants and cafes in the CBD area. And I am a big believer that community organisations play such a crucial role in moving Victoria's economy from the linear to the circular. So let's dive into it. Okay, so the Recycling Victoria Communities Fund supports community-based projects that empower the community to reduce waste. These projects must deliver one or more of the following objectives: reduce waste generation, reduce non-organic material going to landfill by repurposing through local community initiatives, reducing organic material going to landfill by repurposing through local community initiatives, reducing the sources of plastic pollution, litter and illegal dumping. These projects must also boost Victoria's economy through local circular economy initiatives, grow new businesses in new ways and/or create new jobs. So moving into the funding available through this fund, there are 2 types of grants available. In Stream 1 grants, which are between $25,000, which is our minimum, and $59,000, these projects must be delivered within a 12-month time period. Now, Stream 1 grants are for localised community projects that benefit one or more community. Now, Stream 2 grants, which are between $60,000 and then our maximum $250,000, these projects must be delivered within an 18-month period. Now, Stream 2 grants are for large-scale initiatives delivered to communities in a wide geographic area. So potentially this could include one local government area or a region, or they could be all across Victoria. Now, for any grant over $59,000, which are Stream 2 grants, the lead applicant must be operating for a minimum of 2 years. And of course, all projects must take place in Service Victoria. Now, who can apply? To be eligible as a lead applicant, you must be a community group, charity, not-for-profit organisation, or a social enterprise. So we will be asking you to include evidence with your application to show that your organisation is eligible. So, for example, this could be maybe a charity certificate from the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, the ACNC. It could be a current membership or accreditation with a social enterprise, peak body or association, or it could be another type of constitute document you may have. Now, we are strongly encouraging our lead applicants to form partnerships with other organisations to support the delivery of your project and maximise its impact in the community. Now, lead applicants can form partnerships with any organisation. So this could be, for example, a local government. It could be an Aboriginal corporation. It could be a commercial business. It could also be other community groups, not-for-profit organisations and social enterprises. We also encourage our applicants to contact their respective regional waste and resource recovery group, your WRG, to discuss your proposal. Now, your WRGs can support your organisation with their application, but of course they can't recommend the projects for funding. The contact details for all the WRGs in Victoria can be found on Sustainability Victoria's website. Now, going into co-contribution. So the minimum contribution needs to be $1 to every $5 granted. So that's a $1 from the applicant to be $5 granted from Sustainability Victoria. Co-contributions can be provided as financial or in-kind contributions by the applicant or their project partners. Up to 100% of the co-contribution can be in-kind. Now, for more information on in-kind contributions, please refer to our guidelines where we give a definition of in-kind and also some examples of what could be in-kind contributions. Now, going into what can be funded. Now, on this slide, this is just a quick snapshot of what can be funded. So please have a look in the program guidelines for a more comprehensive list. So we've got dedicated project management costs, marketing, advertising and promotional costs, consultancy or contract work required for the project, demonstration projects, demonstration sites or educational expenses, the leasing of equipment if it's directly related to the project, community education activities, project-related travel expenses, capital purchases if they're directly related to the project, insurance costs related to the project, project site leasing costs, permit licensing approval costs, of course, all associated with the project. So into what won't be funded, again, I've just put a quick snapshot there on the screen, but feel free to refer to our program guidelines for a more comprehensive list. Now, as Candice mentioned before, this fund is for projects that meet the fund objectives of avoiding, minimising, reusing, reducing, composting and recycling waste. So litter or illegal dumping projects that have a sole focus on cleanup, like the disposable end of the waste hierarchy, would not be funded. It is expected that the focus of the litter or illegal dumping projects is more on the litter prevention, so at the top of the waste hierarchy, the avoiding and minimising, reusing, reducing, recycling waste, etc. Wages for salaries or existing staff, although these can be in-kind contributions, so refer to the guidelines. Operating costs, electricity, water and other utilities, research or development projects, business case development or feasibility studies, the purchase of vehicles or the purchase of land, and of course projects that have been awarded funding through other Recycling Victoria projects administered by Sustainability Victoria. So of course refer back to the guidelines for a more comprehensive look at that list. Great, so on to the assessment criteria. Now, this will be a competitive and merit-based assessment. So what will we be asking from you in the application? So we'll be asking you the what. We'll be asking you to describe your project to us and how your project fits with the fund objectives of reducing waste generation, reducing non-organic and organic material going to landfill, reducing plastic pollution, litter and illegal dumping, as well as boosting Victoria's circular economy, helping businesses grow new ways and or creating new jobs. We will also be asking you questions such as, what's the size of your project? What behaviour are you aiming to change? How many people will be engaging with your project, as well as some other questions, so we can get a full understanding of what you plan to do. We will be asking you who. Who are you as the lead applicant? What projects have you delivered before? What are your skills and your experience, as well as your capacity? Who are your project partners, and how will you work together to achieve your project? We'll be asking you why. Why does Victoria need your project? How will your project provide, for example, value for money? Maybe create more jobs. For example, how will it help householders save money, etc. in Victoria? And we'll be asking you how. We want you to walk us through how you will carry out your project. We want you to tell us about how your project is commercial, feasible, and capable of being delivered. We'll be asking you questions such as, how will you get the community involved and build community participation over time? How will you evaluate your project's success? And how will you be measuring materials your project has diverted or repurposed from landfill? So how do you apply? Online. So first of all, visit our webpage, the Recycling Victoria Communities Fund, on sustainability.vic.gov.au. And then under the application process section of our webpage, you just click apply online and you'll be taken to what is called our Smarty Grants page, which looks like this on the bottom right here. And it will ask you to make an account with Smarty Grants before you start your application. Now, the great thing about this is that you can put your information for your application in, you can save it, you can log out, you can log back in, add more information as you go. Now, checklist before you apply. So first of all, we want to make sure you read and understand the fund guidelines. We want you to read and agree to comply with SV's funding agreement terms and conditions and terms of participation. Now, something to note is that just yesterday we updated our terms and conditions online. So even if you've read them before, we'd really like you to go back and read them again, especially if you're looking to apply for Stream 2 funding, which is over $59,000, because we did find an error. So we've updated them now. So we strongly encourage you to go back and take another look. We want you to contact your respective work to discuss your proposal. And we'd also like you to read the information bulletin online, because we keep that constantly updated with frequently asked questions, because we want to make sure everyone is receiving exactly the same information. We want you to have your ABN handy and ready for the application. And we want you to have your evidence. So for example, the certificate I was saying before, for example, from the ACNC, to demonstrate the eligibility of the lead applicant ready to put into your application. And of course, if you have any questions, we would like you to email grant inquiries at sustainability.vic.gov.au, and our grants team will be getting back to you. Lastly, we have just a quick snapshot at the key dates. So applications opened on the 8th of January, an exciting start to the year. Information session is of course today on the 9th of Feb. Our applications close at 3 p.m. on the 19th of March. So that's a hard deadline, so make sure you get your applications in before that time. Now we'll notify you of the outcome in June this year, and we also will have funding agreements established in June this year as well. So we've come to the end of the RV Communities Fund information presentation. So now we're going to jump into question time. So thanks everyone who's already been putting your questions through in the chat. We all look forward to answering your questions. Over to you, Candice.
Thanks, Alice. So just to give you an outline of how we'll do the Q&A session, I'm going to go back and read out the questions that have come through, and then I'm going to hand it over to the team to answer those questions. So please keep those questions coming through. As I've said, we may not get to all of them today, but for those that we don't get to, we will endeavour to make sure they're answered in our FAQs and that they're posted on the website and in our information bulletins. So again, please do refer to those when you can and as often as you can if you're planning to apply. And so we will move to the first question here. So if an application is unsuccessful for funding in year one, can we resubmit our application in future rounds? Okay, so I'm going to hand over this to the team to answer this first question.
Okay, I'm happy to jump in there. The answer is yes, provided that the organisation and the project obviously meet all the eligibility requirements. There will be an opportunity to obtain feedback if your application is unsuccessful. And I mean, that feedback can obviously be used to improve your application for future rounds.
Thanks, Alice. Okay, moving on to question 2. Can we apply for other funding from the Victorian Government for our project? Andrea, sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. If the project fits the criteria and meets the objectives of more than one of the Recycling Victoria programs, you can apply for multiple programs, but you'll only be awarded funding from just one program. So we'll be checking which grants are going to which recipients from which fund and making sure that multiple grants aren't doubling up on projects.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay, I'm going to move to the next question. I'm a council waste and resource recovery officer, and I just wondered whether councils can partner with community groups for this funding and to co-deliver the projects.
You can go if you want, Andrea.
Yes, so there's a section in the guidelines on partnerships. I'm just looking through what section it is. But councils are able to be a partner on a project, but the community group, provided it's an incorporated association or an eligible legal structure, would need to be the lead applicant on that project. And so they'd be the contract holder in the grant agreement with SV.
And off the back of that, just to reiterate, we have said that partnerships can be with any organisation. So of course, we're aiming for the lead applicant, to be the community group, the social enterprise, charity and not-for-profit organisation. But yes, of course, we encourage partnerships with any other organisation.
And any questions on eligible types of organisations to partner, I'd suggest you double check section 3.2 of the guidelines and just see what types of organisations are eligible.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Alice and Andrea. There was a question, there was a comment from within the chat. I can't see anywhere the total funds for the Communities Fund and how much is allocated to this round. So Andrea, I might hand over to you to answer this one.
Yeah, it's a $5.4 million program and we're looking at probably allocating around 1.4 million in round 1.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay, next question. Can you apply for a range suite of projects that address the key selection criteria that build on your existing community recycling enterprise? And that's a question from Alison Skinner. Thanks, Alison.
So normally we'd say if you had individual projects, we would say submit an application for an individual project. And I guess it depends on the value of the projects that you're looking at, Alison, and whether they're all part of one big project or whether they're individual. Obviously, we've got a minimum amount of funding, which is $25,000. So it's a tricky one to answer, I guess. The projects, the fund won't be providing grants to projects that have already commenced prior to signing the funding agreement. So it's probably one that we need to take offline and look at how this connects with the other work that you're doing, and whether the projects are going to deliver the objectives of the fund.
Yeah, definitely, Andrea. Back that answer. These projects aren't for existing projects, they're for new projects. So yeah, it is quite hard to give a very clear answer to that question without, of course, seeing the whole application.
Hi, it's Candice here. I think that is one that we're saying we might need to take on notice. So we will do that.
And any questions that we take on notice, we'll be publishing in our FAQs on the website. So everyone will be able to see the response from SV on these questions.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay, so next question from Fiona. Can the funding be used for a pilot project? For example, raw materials, contracted work for developing sustainable workwear uniform range for a local council?
It's really difficult to make individual calls on a very brief project description like that as to whether it would be eligible. If you are confident that your organisation is eligible to apply, that your project will deliver the objectives of the fund, and that you can quantify the benefits of the project, so how many tonnes of material it might be diverting from landfill. You need to figure out whether your project is going to deliver the objectives of the fund. So we're not able to make a call in this type of forum as to whether your project is eligible or not, but you're probably a better gauge of that.
Okay, so next question I have here is from Richard. Please provide examples of in-kind contributions.
So, Richard, we've got some examples in our guidelines as well, actually, as well as a definition. So that could be, for example, time committed to the project from staff working on the project. It could be, for example, something that you already contribute, but you put like a financial number on it. So I can actually read some exact examples for you. Hold on just one moment. Okay, so in-kind contributions is a contribution of a good or a service other than money. So it could include, but of course not limited to, time spent on project activities by volunteers, donated goods or services related to the project, staff time to manage or deliver the project. What wouldn't be counted as an in-kind contribution could be something like operating expenses that are not directly associated with the project, or, for example, like, staff downtime during the instalment of equipment or something that doesn't relate to the project. But have a look at what we've put in our guidelines, and hopefully that gives you more of a sense of that.
Great, thanks, Alice. Okay, the next question we have is, can a university apply?
Is a school, in terms of, is a school or a university eligible to act as a lead applicant? No, but they can partner with an eligible organisation to deliver the project. And also you'd need to look at where the benefits of the project are being delivered to. So the intent of this program is that the benefits of funded projects are realised in the broader community. So a project that's focused on delivering benefits within a single school or within a university, it doesn't serve that primary purpose and objective of the program. So these schools and unis are able to act as a project partner, but they cannot lead an application.
Okay, we have another, well, it could be a different Fiona. We have a question from Fiona. Is the cost of training of staff to upskill for what is required or needed for the pilot project covered?
That is something that we don't have in our guidelines, what will and won't be funded. I guess the assumption was that applicants would be already equipped to deliver their projects, but it's certainly something that we can take on notice and have a chat with our grants team about. So we'll come back to you with an answer on that question.
And just to go off that, provided that this training of staff was, directly related to what the project aimed to do and also the objectives of the fund, would take a look into that, of course. And for something like that, we would need to see the whole application as well, to sort of make that call.
Yeah, it's Candice here, and I'll add to that further. And I heard this answer, and I thought it was really fitting for this question. If that training is integral to the project program and delivery, then I would think that it is. And an example that springs to mind is, you're recovering a particular product or textile that potentially you haven't before, and perhaps there are particular OH&S requirements that would require you to train up your staff, then that kind of thing would absolutely, could be funded. But yes, I will, with the team, we'll take that one on notice and come back anyway, just to clarify that. Okay, so next question from Jill and Sue. Is this a suitable project? Trees cut down from Vic Road's works, milled and made into outdoor garden furniture. This will be for community garden furniture, fences, etc., and other community areas.
I'd say to that question seems to have a couple of things in there. So you're talking about the trees, and then you're also talking about the community garden furniture, or you're talking about the community garden itself. So I guess that could probably hit a couple of things. But I guess in regards to specifics, questions of would this be funded or would it not be funded as a project idea, it just always needs to relate back to the objectives of the fund. So does it reduce waste generation? Does it reduce non-organic material or organic material going to landfill? Does it reduce the sources of plastic pollution or boost Victoria's circular economy? And as Andrew mentioned before, like, you would know that from your project idea, so you're probably the best person to judge that, but it is difficult to make a call without seeing the whole application to give a yes or no answer to something like that.
Okay, next question is from Monica. Are existing staff regarded as such if they've been voluntary?
Are existing staff regarded as an in-kind contribution? Do you think that's what it's asking, or?
I think that it is. And look, Monica, if you needed to further clarify that, I'd encourage you to do that in the chat box. But yes, I assume that's the question.
Okay, so the grants will not support salaries or wages of existing staff. Those salaries and wages can be counted as the in-kind contribution towards a project. But volunteer hours as well can be counted as an in-kind contribution towards a project. So you need to calculate what those hours are worth, how many hours those volunteers are likely to invest in delivering the project, and then put a dollar figure on that volunteer effort. And again, the in-kind contribution from all applicants is required to be at least $1 for every $5 that SV provides through the grant. So it's a really important question, and we do need to emphasise that all volunteer time in delivering these projects, please try and figure out how much that's worth when you're submitting your application.
That's a great point. Thanks, Andrea. We have got quite a few questions, so we'll keep going through.
Right.
So Stream 2, is Stream 2 applicable to multiple townships across a rural local government area? And that's from Seb.
Okay, thanks, Seb. Stream 2 grants are applicable to like multiple local government areas, regions, or across Victoria. So I guess what I was trying to mention in the funding overview is that Stream 1 is to benefit one or more community, but for Stream 2, we really are looking for you to get multiple communities involved, which could be a region or it could be all across Victoria. So we are looking for projects that span across communities.
Great, thanks, Alice. And this is a great question from Alison Skinner. Will the funds be distributed across all of Victoria? At times, regional communities are underrepresented.
I think, yeah, we definitely want to see regional projects. We want to see a good spread of projects across Victoria. There's great opportunities in regional communities for circular economy projects. Some opportunities only exist in rural communities. So we're really keen to see a good spread of different project types, and as such, a really good spread of funded projects across Victoria. So thanks, Alison. That was a great question, and certainly we will be.
Next question is from Steve Pereira. What is the criteria for the size of project? How do we define size?
Yeah, that's a good question, Steve. In your application, we will be asking you questions such as, you know, what will your community participation look like, or how will you get your community involved? But then also things such as how much material is going to be diverted from landfill. So we are sort of asking you those questions so that you can tell us what you estimate the size of your project to be and the impact that you think your project's going to have on, for example, on behaviours as well. So I guess size is a pretty hard thing to define because projects are all going to be so different on how they're going to impact communities. But we are basing some of our questions so we can get an idea of that. So yeah, how are you going to impact behaviour? How many people are going to be involved, and the materials, that sort of thing.
And just to add to that, Alice, we haven't set a minimum tonnage or a minimum number of rubbish bags to be picked up, or, you know, we haven't we're not dictating what the minimum volume of waste to be diverted is, but we're really keen to see your workings and your assumptions in how you figure out what the impact of your project is going to be. And it's a competitive grant process, so projects will be compared across each other in terms of their impact and their engagement of communities. So it's really up to you to demonstrate that in your grant application so that the evaluation panel understands what you're aiming for and what your projects are going to achieve.
Okay, so the next question I have is from Hazel. My project is smaller than $25,000. Can I still apply?
Now, our minimum grant is $25,000. So I guess that answers the question. Yeah, that is our minimum grant.
What you could look at doing though is maybe taking on a project partner or another organisation that has a similar idea, or creating multiple projects across your community or across a region. So again, we are looking for impact with these projects. So maybe look at, is there a way that you can team up with others to amplify your reach in the community and apply for more funding?
Thanks, Andrea. This is an interesting question from Olivia. In regards to partnerships with not-for-profits, does SV have any corporate connections interested in partnering that you could offer as a network for conversations to kick off? I could probably, it's Candice here, I think I could probably answer that one in that from a probity perspective, no, I can't see that SV would be making that connection with potential grant recipients. And, you know, we can't be seen to you know, favour or prop up one project over another. So I'm going to answer that to say no, we wouldn't be able to do that.
And also in saying that, Candice, we are encouraging you to speak to your local WIRGs, and your WIRGs can help you support your application as well. They know all these details about the fund as well. So if you wanted to have a conversation with them about, is there anyone in the area that has your idea or something like that, they are people that you can have a conversation with about your application.
Thanks, Alice. Okay, next question. Hi there. Are infrastructure requirements needed for the project, such as concrete slab? Are they eligible? Can we submit more than one application?
I'll answer the second bit first. Yes, you can, provided that the projects are eligible. They're an eligible type of project that meets the fund objectives. If you've got the time, you can write as many grant applications as you want. The question about the concrete slab, though, I know that we've listed plant and equipment as an eligible expenditure item. I don't think so. Capital purchases, e.g. infrastructure or equipment. Would that cover it, Candice, do you think?
Possibly. Hi, it's Candice back again. I think possibly, again, probably encourage you to reread the guidelines. If it's integral to the project, my understanding it may be, and so long as it's not also funded somewhere else, particularly through RV. Alice, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to this one.
I mean, I'd say if like capital purchases, yes, can be funded, but if it's integral to the project, so it would have to be, you know, obviously very needed for the project to be successful. So I guess it's another one of those, without seeing the entire application, it is hard to say a yes or no. But yes, I definitely encourage you to look at the guidelines and have a look in to make sure it fits the objectives of the fund, of course, and that it is integral to your project.
And it also depends on who owns the land where the slab is being put down. So the fund won't be paying for infrastructure or assets owned and serviced by, say, local government or a government organisation that manages public land. So if you have a look at section 3.4 and 3.5 of the guidelines, that should help you figure it out. But we can certainly give a longer response in the bulletin.
Okay, we have lots of questions, which is fantastic. So there's a couple I can answer quite quickly, so I'm going to do that just to get through some of these. Shannon Mead asked, you know, sorry I came in late, and you may have already covered it, but is it a 5-to-1 ratio? Yes, it is. So for every dollar invested by the grantee, SV would contribute $5. So $1 from the grantee, $5 from SV, and that $1 can actually be an in-kind contribution as well. So hopefully I've answered that for you, Shannon. The next question is from Joanne. Can eligible projects include replication expansion of existing projects as we've been operating for 15 years?
So if your existing project has proven successful and it's demonstrated to be a model or an enterprise or a project that works really well, then if you're replicating that across multiple sites, then that's the kind of scaling up that we want to see through the program. So the fund won't pay for projects that are already happening already, as mentioned before, but if you're creating something new with the grant, then certainly that's eligible.
Okay, back to me again. There really are a lot of questions, so I'm going to try and see how quickly we can get through these in the last few minutes. Can a project partner fill in the application form, or does it have to be the lead applicant?
I would say that because this is the RV Communities Fund and we are aiming at community groups, not-for-profit, social enterprises and charities, that yes, the lead applicant should be filling in the application form. They are the lead applicant after all, so yes, would definitely say that the lead applicant should be the one filling in the application.
And also the lead applicant's going to be the contract holder as well. So they need to be across the detail of this program and what it's requiring and what's being proposed. So it's in the lead applicant's interest to be involved in the project, and that should start from the beginning and writing the grant application.
Thank you, Andrea. Lisa Linton's asked the question, can you give us ideas as to how we can get some stats on landfills? Amounts of different categories such as clothing and books. Lisa, I think we might take that one on notice unless the team answers that one to you directly. Next question, is the objective of the grants to allow the chosen project to be commercially viable at the end of the 12 or 18-month period? Is this a component of the key selection criteria?
We're keen to, and from memory it is asked in the application form, how will your project remain viable over the long term? So are you looking at ways to build into your project, maybe a way of turning some income or some way to keep it operating after the term of the grant agreement's finished? We're aiming to create a circular economy in Victoria by partnering with the community in this program. And we're not going to achieve that if we're just funding a bunch of stop-start projects. Of course, a lot of community projects will taper off near the end of the funded period, but if you're able to find ways to continue delivering benefits beyond the life of the grant, then that's a real strength in your project. Did you have anything to add there, Alice?
I think you said it pretty well. It's not specifically something that we are looking for in the key criteria, but what it comes down to is that we want to know that these projects are successful, and they, obviously aren't going to stop right at the end of when their, funding finishes. So I guess more the answer to that question is, we want to have the confidence that these projects will be incredibly successful. And if that means that they are commercially viable, well, then that adds to the success of the project.
Okay, this one's a quick one, I would say. May has asked, is it possible for an organisation to submit an application for streams 1 and 2?
The answer is yes. If you, of course, are eligible and you can meet the co-contribution requirements, you are able to do that. Of course, we're not going to we're not going to make both applications successful, but of course, if you have a project idea that fits within Stream 1 and you also have a project idea that fits within Stream 2, by all means, feel free to send both applications in.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Can we apply to this and one of the other grants on offer by SV? For example, Innovation Fund.
Of course, you'll only be awarded one amount of SV funding, provided that you're successful. We can't award you twice, but if you want to apply for another SV grant, absolutely, go for it. We encourage you to.
Okay, I'm conscious of the fact that we've hit 2:57 p.m. and there are still a bunch of questions in the chat. And so, apologies in advance that we haven't had time to get to all of your questions today. It's really fantastic to see all these questions coming through. And we will endeavour to answer those questions and provide those answers back to you in the next information bulletin. As we said, please keep referring to the SV website as we update documentation regularly and often. And I know Alice alluded to the fact that there was a minor error that had to be fixed up. So for those of you particularly going for the funding at the higher end of the spectrum, please do reread the guidelines. But I'm going to close us, finish us up for today. So thank you very much for giving us your time and sending us all of your excellent questions. Really, really, really appreciate it. And so I want to also thank the team for the work that they've done bringing these grants together, but also in setting up today's session. And in particular, really want to, thank Alice, Grace, and also Nadia, who's, done a lot of stuff in the back end to make this happen, and a contractor that we've got on board. So thanks, Bex, as well. So without further ado, we will finish up for today, but thank you for your time and good luck with your applications.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.